Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon to get the latest updates.
I'm with Amrullah Saleh, the first vice presidential candidate of the Ashraf Ghani Amrullah Saleh campaign. The presidential elections are over here in Afghanistan. Results are not out yet, but they should be. They're expected any time. Mr. Saleh, welcome to ThePrint, and thank you so much for speaking today.
Most welcome.
So, Mr. Saleh, tell me, how did the campaign go? You are the first vice presidential candidate of Ashraf Ghani. How was the campaign?
Well, the campaign had multiple aspects. Politically, it went very well. We dwelled on Afghan nationalism, narrative of Afghan nationalism. And
what does that mean? What does the narrative of Afghan nationalism mean?
Afghan nationalism means reviving our roots, which is pluralism, which is tolerance, which is dignified life, which is less mental dependence on foreign aid, whether military or civilian.
Mm-hmm.
Afghan nationalism is the resilience of Afghan gene to resist interference and manipulation by outside powers.
Mm-hmm.
The Afghan nationalism.
Outside powers like the US, like who else?
Well, let's not mistaken cooperation and interaction with interference. There are powers who are coming here and respecting Afghan history, Afghan identity, Afghan state, and Afghan people, and we work together with them. But there are powers, and there have been powers in history who have come to change our way of life and to manipulate us, and it has always caused resistance by the Afghan people.
So who are these people? Who are these powers?
Well, you know our resistance against the Soviet Union. You are well aware of our continuous resistance against Pakistan, creepy interference and manipulation of Afghan society. Those are the two contemporary examples. But if you state the Western powers who have come to Afghanistan and they have alliance with us, they are not necessarily manipulative powers. We have common interest, which is to fight terrorism, which is to help Afghanistan build a viable, functioning, strong state. To a large extent, we have achieved that aim. Afghan state is functioning and it is delivering. And Afghan identity and nationalism is coming back, and the country is distancing itself from radicalism and from fanaticism, which was imposed upon us in the name of religion. So we are distancing ourselves from that.
Right. So you talked about reducing your dependence on foreign powers, whether whether it's the US, Pakistan, or the European countries. But it's the Americans are now negotiating with the Taliban. So what do you make of that?
Well, first of all, Americans don't owe us anything. We are, as a country, as a nation, we have a viability. We have a value. There is one globe and there is one Afghanistan. It's a very wrong notion to say that Afghanistan can be abandoned. It can never be abandoned.
So what do you mean when you say the Americans don't owe you anything?
Well, if they want to negotiate with the Taliban, then they own the consequences of bilateral negotiations with the Taliban. We will not own those consequences. They preferred way for a settlement, which we have always advocated for, is the Republic of Afghanistan negotiating with the Taliban for the aim of bringing them under the flag.
So if the Americans do come to a conclusion to their negotiations with the Taliban, you may not accept that? Is that what you're saying?
If our interest is not preserved, and we have very clear interest, If our interest is not preserved, we will not endorse any agreement by any power with the Taliban.
So you're saying that President Trump can call the Taliban and whoever he wants to Camp David or any other place in America, but if you don't agree with what that result is, you're not going to accept it.
We have no power to exert any type of control on the White House. It's the power headquarters of United States. We have our own interest. There is a divergence of interest between us and the United States, and there is convergence of interest, and there can be divergence too. So far, we see more convergence than divergence.
President Ghani himself was going to Camp David for secret negotiations with the Taliban when it was called off at the last minute.
I am not aware of that.
There were reports in all the papers, Mr. Saleh.
Well, those are reports. I have not heard it from President's mouth.
So you're saying that he would not go to these negotiations at Camp David or elsewhere and talk to the Taliban?
I want to speculate on his behalf.
Okay. So this divergence of interest or this convergence of interest with the Americans that you talk about, in some parts of the country, I've just been in Herat, there's some fear that the Taliban are coming back. Are you fearful too?
The fear is always there. For example, India is fighting Lashkar-e-Toiba, which is very small compared to the Taliban, and India as a big society has to have a legitimate concern and fear. Taliban are bigger than Lashkar-e-Taiba. The fear is genuine, but the society has grown resilient enough to mitigate the return of the Taliban, and it is being mitigated, and it is being the society is being defended. Taliban's campaign of 2019 was politically a disaster for them. Violence-wise, they were able to massacre people. So what is the philosophy for massacring civilians? Can they sell it to the public opinion either in Afghanistan or outside the world? No. So in my view, the Taliban are politically a spent force. That is why they are insisting that they should not be disarmed, they should not go to elections, they should be given a space without elections.
But they do control half the territory of your country, even as we speak.
That's totally wrong. They don't control half of the country. They are able to spread fear in half of the country. They don't control it.
But their fear is perhaps stronger than the people's confidence in your government.
I again disagree with that. There is a thirst all over the country for connectivity with Kabul. The government of Afghanistan has a massive power of convention. It was amazing, yet a very sweet event to see the Loya Jirga even drawing representatives from the Taliban-held territories. I had breakfast with some of them, and I said, they had come from Helmand and Kandahar. This was the jirga about the peace process. No, this is unprecedented in our recent history, the government having legitimate power of convention. This president, this palace of the president can call upon any Afghan, ask for a meeting, come to Kabul. It will happen. The only group which is refusing to do it, and that under very direct pressure and control of the ISI, is the Taliban.
And you see that clearly?
Oh yes, the Taliban delegation from Qatar, they landed in Pakistan, and in Pakistan they merged into the society. Where are they? They have gone to their homes. They are Pakistani-based Taliban.
So don't you say this to the Americans that they have to destroy their safe havens or they have to give back the Taliban to you before they can start talking to anyone?
We have told them, but I am an Afghan. I don't have to say everything to Americans. We also have our own capabilities of defending ourselves.
But tell me, why are the Pakistanis so desperate to expand their sphere of influence into your country?
Well, we have always spoken about this many times. I think Pakistan as a state suffers from a fractured psyche. And that fractured psyche is the reason that they keep these odd and awkward, bizarre instruments of foreign policy in their hands. They look at India as a rival, as a Hindu state, and they believe that the only way they can compete with India is promotion of radicalism. So, and they treat Afghanistan as an experiment ground for breeding radicalism.
But you are a Muslim state like them. You're the Islamic Republic. So are they.
No, it's not that simplistic. It's not simplistic as like that. We are Muslims of Afghanistan. There is a notion of nation state very strong here. The Pakistanis have been trying to impose upon us the notion of supposedly Muslim Ummah in order to crush our sense of nationalism, and that has faced utter failure. We are Muslims of Afghanistan, and that word Afghanistan brings so much color, diversity, spice, literature into our religious beliefs. Look, Afghanistan is the birthplace of Rumi, and people call Masnavi Quran in Persian. So it's not that we are not, as they portray us, very simplistic.
So if you win, if you win, Mr. Saleh, or your team wins, then what about the minorities in Afghanistan? Because the Sikh community, which is a very small one, has lived here for a very long time, and yet during the Taliban rule were forced to wear armbands which sort of announced their segregation.
First of all, Sikhs have not lived here for long. They are the owners of this country. They are not people of Indian origin. They are Afghans. They are pre-Islam Afghans. Look at our respect for the minorities. We have given them a seat in our parliament, and some days ago something happened. A police cop misbehaved with the Sikh member of our parliament. For the first time in history of Afghan democracy, the Afghan parliament convened an emergency session at 11:30 p.m. to investigate the case. Doesn't that show our deep respect for our fellow Afghans who come from minority faith? So that is true Afghanistan. I mean, we look at Sikhs, the ancient Afghan traders who once upon time had monopoly of the money market, of the textile market. They were the first bankers of the society. They were the merchants and still are of the medicinal herbs, and their belongingness and their love for the soil goes so deep that sometimes back I read the interview of one of them in Pakistan province, the only one living there. He said, "I'm not going to Canada. Government of Canada provided them mass asylum and they all refused." Which means they know this is not a Taliban country.
But are you, so I just want to come back to this question, which I've asked just now, is that if the Taliban comes back in a power sharing deal with you, how are you going to share power with them?
You see, you can ask me a question, what if the sky falls? It won't. The Taliban will not come. So why should I waste my time speculating about something impossible?
So then let me ask you, you said that you have spoken to the Americans about safe havens in Pakistan. What do they say?
You see, there's something great I learned from an Indian scholar who defined a superpower. He said, a superpower is a power which has the ability to manage contradictions.
You're not answering my question. What did the Americans tell you about the safe havens in Pakistan?
Our American allies are fully aware of the safe havens, and they are fully aware of the connections of the Pakistani establishment with the Taliban. They were the ones who found bin Laden near the Pakistani military academy. They are the ones who employed Dr. Afridi to go around and find, etc., etc. They are fully aware of it. Now,
however, I can hear a however.
Well, how they use that knowledge to shape their foreign policy, that I don't know.
But it seems to me, living in India, that they don't seem to be using their knowledge. For example, in these negotiations with the Taliban, they're not saying anything to the Taliban about removing those safe havens, or to the Pakistanis.
Of many things that we and Americans look eye to eye is the fact that we both know Pakistan is a culprit. It's a country guilty and sinful of assisting terror groups. Again, translating that knowledge and that awareness into policy, at least here we have clearly translated that into policy. How America will do it or it has not done it, it's not up to me to speculate.
But the Americans are fully aware of the double standards the Pakistani establishment is playing.
Well, I mean, that you should ask an American.
But Zalmay Khalilzad, who's negotiating and now back to negotiating, do you think he's fully aware?
I have had no one-on-one meetings with Zalmay Khalilzad for a very long time.
Okay. Yeah. So last couple of questions, Mr. Saleh. And among the first days of your campaign, your office was attacked. It was gutted. There was this big suicide bomb. Who was behind it?
Well, I have simplified it. I have said it could be the hand of anyone, but the brain was the brain of the ISI.
And you are sure about that?
Absolutely. Like back of my hand, yes, I am sure of it.
Because you survived by the skin of your teeth. Can you just describe a little bit about what happened?
They used one track bomb to massacre my guards outside the building. It was a flat. It was an apartment building. But we had built it with high standards to resist such an eventuality. They used a Corolla bomb, and then they used a rucksack bomb to open one of the armored gates, and then they stormed the building with several suicide bombers. They managed to get into my personal office maybe within 5 to 6 minutes, but by then I had moved to the rooftop where I had a cache of weapons for such an eventuality. I and 6 of my staff who had done this rehearsal for such a troubled day. We resisted. They tried to come and take the roof. They couldn't. And then I managed to escape, but 30 people were killed.
You were shooting from the roof, you yourself?
Yeah, at the corridor. Yeah. There was a little corner shielding us from the suicide bomber. He threw 18 grenades by his grenade launcher. And one of my guards at the roof got wounded. I sent him for treatment a couple of days later to Delhi. He recovered, and then I managed to escape to the house next door, and the owner of the house, they were massacred. The wife, the son, the grandson, the daughter-in-law, they were all massacred.
In that same attack?
In that same attack.
So how did you escape to the house then?
Well, it's we put a ladder to the neighbor's roof, and they attacked the ladder. Then some of my PSD personal security detail, they put the window under fire from which they were shooting the ladder, and it was like 3-4 meters, not a big distance. And then I had to jump to the roof next door. One of us who did the jump, he got his backbone fractured, but I was unhurt. Then we went out, and the fight continued for another 8 hours until the whole building was literally blown up to melt them down, because they used explosive which impacts downward to make holes in the roof and then throw a lot of hand grenades and explosives to kill them. They were all killed, and after 8 hours I went back to my office to see my massacred friends and colleagues, and I did.
And how many people died in that attack?
22 from my office, 4 from the neighboring house which I used to escape, and the other 4 from the neighborhood.
So this is really serious the way you're describing it. And what is the message that you've got from this?
It's a serious fight. It is not a war of words. It is a war which involves blood. Yeah, and they had taken no chance to miss me, but they did. They missed me. And I am now speaking and telling them I know who did it. The hand is not important, the brain is. The brain behind the attack was the eyesight.
And that didn't deter you from your campaign?
No, I was prepared for that eventuality.
My last question, Mr. Saleh, is that you're from the north, you're from the Panjshir Valley, your presidential candidate, President Ashraf Ghani, is from the south, he's Pashtun. Can the twain meet?
First of all, both of us are Afghans, and that word transcends mountains, ethnicity, language barriers, background. That's a very, very strong identity. We are both Afghans. These sub-nationalities were created to divide us. The reception people of Afghanistan gave me in the east and in the south as I stood up to speak. Oh, I wish I was a poet or a writer to articulate it. It was unbelievable. Why should I downgrade that magnificent, resilient, proud and powerful identity and say Ashraf Ghani is from here and I am from there? That's nonsense.
Mr. Saleh, first of all, thank you so much for speaking to ThePrint, and second of all, be safe, and we wish you all the best in your political journey ahead.
You know, I was going to, in the beginning of this interview, to introduce you to the safe measures if this building was to attack. I don't want you to be casualty of interviewing me.
I will be absolutely fine.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. This is Jyoti Malhotra for ThePrint here in Kabul in Afghanistan with Mr. Amrullah Saleh. We are sitting in a makeshift office. This is your...
Right, I lost my stylish office. This is a very makeshift office. Yeah.
But thank you so much again. This is Jyoti Malhotra. Please keep watching our YouTube channel. It's live and buzzing.